How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Not all meals are created equal. For instance, breakfast has the spicy egg McMuffin for a limited time, and lunch doesn't. McDonald's breakfast comes first. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. All right, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I am your host, Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist, published author, professional speaker, wearer of many hats, and very excited to do today's episode with I think a really first time kind of speaker for us. I don't think we've ever had somebody quite like today's speaker, Grant. But before we let Grant introduce himself, I have to, of course, introduce my co-host, fabulous and well-coiffed Mr. Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here as always. Dr. Matt, I love that you are now putting published author above professional speaker a little bit. I see you doing that.
I thought you'd like that.
Pretty soon, published author is going to be like first.
Maybe. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But I'm also really excited for our guest today. We were talking a tiny bit in the pre-show, and I just wanted to dive into so much of like his background with him, but I was like, I shouldn't yet, just so that we don't get too deep into it. But Grant, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and a little bit about you?
Yeah, Jake, Matt, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show and for the pleasure of addressing your audience. So we are similar in nature, Matt. I am also a published author. We'll talk more about that. So congratulations as you move through that life. My name is Grant Harris. I am the founder and president of GTH Consulting, LLC, which is a boutique management consulting firm. And I offer customized diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, organizational development, and human capital services to both public and private clients. I happen to be a certified diversity executive. I am a 3-time published autistic author. I am a consultant, speaker, and corporate board member. My work is really to help individuals and institutions move from what I call compliance to community. And we can dig into that deeper. But I help individuals and institutions achieve organizational excellence. And I do that while promoting neurodiversity in the workplace from the boardroom to the mailroom. And everybody that I have these conversations with is very intrigued by what from the boardroom to the mailroom means. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason that I did it that way is to ask questions and inspire questions, and happy to talk more about that. And I'm a Washingtonian by trade. I still live in the Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia in a suburb called Winchester. And again, very glad to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, man. Well, we love the DMV. We're here for that. I actually think I gave a talk in Winchester once. I think it was there. But I mean, also, y'all, like that bio, like you see why we have him here. Like, I was like, this is the best conversation ever. I mean, people accuse me all the time of speaking in bumper stickers, but from the boardroom to the mailroom is the best bumper sticker ever. I mean, we need some branded merch for you, Grant. We need to, can we have hoodies? I feel like we should have hoodies.
Yeah, I like a good hoodie.
Where to work. So, I mean, tell us about that journey, because I have a feeling nobody starts there, but was that always the plan, or did you realize along the way, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do?
Oh no, that was not the realization at all. And we can go back as far as you like. I have this journey. I've called it the first and only. In my family, I've been the first and or the only to do many things. I come from a family of five. I have two older siblings. Grew up happy kid, played a lot of sports, enjoyed school, had friends, etc., etc. No negative traumatic experiences outside of just being a human on the planet. But no, did not grow up wanting to do this DEI thing, as it's called, that morphed into. So I was the first in my family to attend PWI, a college educated family. PWI is a predominantly white institution. For those of you who are unfamiliar, my all of my family attended HBCUs, historically black colleges or universities. So I was the first to do that. I was the first to go to military school. I was the first to earn an athletic scholarship to go to college. And I was the first to have kids and to buy a house and to make six figures. And these kind of things, when I say them, they are historically and typically traditionally markers of success in Western culture, right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying that because I bought a house before my sisters did that somehow I'm better than them. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that I've been in those types of environments with traditional markers of success in Western culture. I've been able to achieve those things faster than other people in my family, but they have done other things that I haven't done as well. I am also the only person to chair a committee, a major committee, or be a corporate board member. I am not the first author in my family, but I'm the first one to write about workplace culture. And I am definitely the first in my family to be diagnosed with a disability. I was diagnosed autistic about 3 years ago. And since then, I have had the honor of writing and speaking to folks like you about neurodiversity in general and how I identify as neurodistinct. We can talk more about why I identify as that way, but also bringing that to the workplace and helping organizations and the people that work for them understand more about their mindsets and their behaviors and how they can be more effective, efficient, and equitable in what they do. And in my work life, I also have a lot of first and onlys. I've usually been the first and or only person of color in the rooms that I have been in, or the youngest. The years are ticking on me, but I still have the fortune of sometimes being in the misfortune of sometimes still being the youngest in the room. So a lot of my time is spent in that first and only capacity, which a lot of times is lonely, can be lonely. And when you add on to that now the realization of being a person with a disability, I happen to be a black man in America, which is not easy by any stretch of imagination anyway. And then you add on being neurodistinct and specifically being autistic. So a lot happening there, but that's part of why I tell my story and I share my story so that someone somewhere might be inspired to do the same.
And thank you for giving space to speak about what this means from like the diversity lens of wealth, right? Like socioeconomic status, right? But also as a black man, I mean, you're shining lights on intergenerational journeys and what to broaden the conversation around like the word minority in a lot of different ways. It's so brave of you to share that story, but it's also so helpful because I think you're really, I think, broadening what a lot of people would think about when they think about those kind of words. So thank you for that. You mentioned that you were diagnosed autistic 3 years ago. So what's it like getting diagnosed as an adult?
So I should tell a little bit more about the history. I taught autistic kids as a special educator at the middle school level before I ever knew I was autistic. So I worked in a Title I, and I'm going to use some words and phrases that the audience may or may not be familiar with. I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I worked at a Title I, majority, minority, English as a second language, high free and reduced lunch, low income environment, which meant nobody had any money. Funds were coming from state and federal coffers to provide programs and meals for students that are underprivileged and underserved. And in that environment, I taught English to English language learners in a limited, basically segregated environment, which meant they spent all of their time in one or two classrooms throughout their career. And I was basically one of the few teachers that they had interactions with. And this was all well before I knew that I was autistic at all. So I was familiar with the IEP process, or the individual education plan process, and helping students who are neurodistinct live life and learn, etc. And that was some time ago. Fast forward to being late stage diagnosed as an adult, I am well aware of the privilege that I have, although I know others that have more privilege than I do. The process was eye opening. I had already been working in this field and doing this work informally in many ways, and had just started formally. I had already had that experience with autistic children. My wife is neurodiverse. She's ADHD, and she's been diagnosed for many, many years, and she's been medicated for many years. My oldest daughter has some executive functioning challenges, and she's successfully battled depression over the years. So neurodiversity wasn't new in my household. So it wasn't like fresh and I didn't know anything about it and these kind of things, but it didn't touch me personally until my wife, bless her heart, brought it to my attention. And we were going through a trough of communication, meaning it wasn't great. I don't know if you guys are married, but any of those married folks out there, sometimes communication is flying high and then sometimes it's in the dumps. So we were in the dumps for a while, just at each other, trying to figure it out. And she sends me an article one day, and it's a listicle of 8 to 10 things of how your spouse might be autistic. And I said, okay. We text back and forth and send each other things. So I read it, and I think it was like 10 things. And off the list of that 10 things, I strongly identified with 8.
Wow.
And number 9 was like, yeah, I could see that. But so she was like, yeah, she had always had an inkling when we were dating many, many years ago, but she never really pulled on that thread. So at this point, I was like, yeah, I have never been one of those people or men, and we know men, a lot of us are doctor avoidant. We think we're Superman. We don't want to go to the doctor, especially anything to do with mental health. You all are in a different space, but most men, not necessarily there. So I was like, yeah, great. Okay, cool. Let's figure this out. Which meant I had to find a practitioner, which meant I had to commute to the practitioner multiple times, which meant I had to pay this practitioner thousands of dollars, and we had insurance at the time. All of these things are barriers that a lot of people, especially Black people and Black men, don't have the wherewithal to get over, or they can't for one reason or another. I was very fortunate to be able to do that. I got a referral from a friend of mine who happens to be a psychologist in her own right. And she said, yeah, this person is great. So I got a referral that was free, and that was quick, and that was a warm referral. That doesn't happen often. I was able to commute back and forth because I was working from home at the time, and I didn't have to take off from work in order to get to where I needed to be. And I had to go back and forth multiple times. And then I had to pay thousands of dollars to get this diagnosis. And that's not even talking about the testing process, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. But even as an adult, even as a man, I had a female psychologist. There are underlying, and psychology was my undergrad. I studied psychology in my undergrad and organizational psychology and development for my MBA. So I'm always thinking about my thinking.
Right.
And there are always biases that the human brain is going through, whether or not, unconscious and aware, and et cetera. So I'm trying to do these tests and not think about the fact that I'm doing these tests. And it's difficult, but there are things that the brain can't control, and there are things that the body does that clinical technicians pick up on, et cetera, et cetera. So I go through all of that, and I get diagnosed. On my scale, they've changed autism ratings from Asperger's it used to be, and I was initially diagnosed with Asperger's, but we had that conversation, and that's no longer a thing, and that's a whole conversation that we can have at a different time, the history of Asperger's. So I got my diagnosis, and I was okay with it. Like I was like, I'm autistic, that's cool. I literally think that it's cool to be autistic. Now, would I think that way if I hadn't taught autistic kids? I don't know. But I definitely don't think that it'll be like, oh man, I'm autistic. Like I wouldn't react that way. The biggest shift or challenge or transition for me, even to widen the aperture, like you said, Matt, we go to, okay, now I'm a person with a disability. Well, you can become disabled at any point in time, or you can be born disabled. I was born disabled, I just didn't know. And now I have new information. So that gives me, I'm a protected class now, which I wasn't before. So now I'm in a protected class. That's the big umbrella. I have a disability. Okay. What do I do with that? Then you slide down the ladder and say, oh, at the time I would call myself neurodiverse. Now I describe myself as a neurodistinct. And what does that mean? Because there are 13 to 15 different types of neurodistinction that we're aware of. And then you slide down the ladder even further and you say, I'm autistic, which has its own biases, its own prejudices in people's minds in and of itself without being disabled, et cetera, et cetera. I do not look, sound, act like the typical, if you ask 10 people on the street of what they envision an autistic person to look like or act like, they're probably a young white kid with a helmet on in a chair, and they're probably stimming, making a lot of noise. And those are those autistic people. And then you have a whole range of different types of autistic people, because when you meet one, you only meet one. So that said, the biggest difficulty that I have had and the biggest challenge that I still grapple with internally is that my wife is neurodistinct, my daughter is neurodistinct, I am neurodistinct. However, my wife and my daughter can and do take medication, and they are a different person. They act differently, they speak differently, they feel differently, they think differently for a certain amount of time, but they can take a pill and do that. I cannot do that. I cannot take a pill and be less autistic. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is because any work that gets done by me in terms of bettering my communication, bettering my behavior, adjusting my thought patterns and the way that I approach myself and my life, that is done by me first, and then in concert with the people that love me around me. But I don't get any help with that. I don't pursue therapy at the moment. I know some people do. I have not, for lots of reasons. So it's just me and then the people around me helping me to adjust and be better. So that's been the biggest transition. But other than that, Matt, Jake, I think being autistic is extremely cool. I think autism is cool. I think being different is cool. But it has been the biggest struggle for me that the people around me can take a pill and they can be better, quote unquote. But I cannot do that. So
if you were able to theoretically like take a pill and make it better, like you were saying, what kind of aspects of your autism would you want to take away from, and what would you want to like emphasize more and kind of like highlight more?
Well, that's a good word. My wife will tell you, and anybody that loves me will tell you, is empathy. That would probably be something, and I have empathy.
Yeah.
When I show it, how I show it is different than what the people around me would prefer, and how they have been shown empathy over the years. And my wife has done a lot of work, and the people around me have done a lot of work to understand that it's not that I'm not being empathetic. It's that I'm being empathetic in the way that I know how and the way that I naturally show. But I also have to work to be better for the people in my lives, for my family, for my coworkers, and et cetera, et cetera. It's not like, oh, this is just me, take it or leave it. Like, that's not my approach either. It's like, yeah, this is my natural state. This is my first reaction. This is uncomfortable for me, but I'm going to try to meet you halfway. So that you can see that it's not just I'm over here and you're over there. So empathy is a large one in the way that most people would want to receive it. That's one. Flexibility is another. I live a highly structured life. I use timers. I use calendars. I take specific breaks. I time box my time. I batch things that I do. I use specific numbers and ranges and times. I only like even numbers, or my favorite number is 5. And outside of any number that's even or any number that ends in a 5, it kind of irks me out and wears me out on the radio, on the TV. So being flexible with these types of things. And over the years, I have been masking, and we haven't talked about masking. I've learned to do that. I've learned more what masking is. For your listeners who are unfamiliar, masking broken down, and I'm sure, Matt, that you could do a better job, but breaking down masking is basically downplaying or minimizing your natural traits or your natural thoughts and behaviors and reactions to maximize what the cultural is expecting of you. So minimizing your internal thoughts, behaviors, etc., and taking on the thoughts and the behaviors and the actions of the external so that you basically fit in better and easier. However, what that does is that wears on people over time. It wears on you mentally, physically, emotionally, etc. And especially being a Black man, I have to present myself in certain situations differently than a white man would, then differently than a Black woman would, differently than an Asian man would, etc. And that weighs over time. But when you understand what masking is and you either remove that mask completely or you let the people see behind that mask that you want to see behind that mask, then you have a different person. I'm a different person with my wife than I am with other folks, etc. And the mask is removed. She had not seen that for a very long time. Now she does. In the workplace, same type of thing for an employee who, and I've done that before too. I've been in the workroom celebrating Sally Sue's birthday and everybody's eating the cake. And I'm just like, why am I here? I don't even really like Sally Sue, but I'm not going to tell her that because that's impolite. And then I have to stand here with cake that I don't like because I prefer pie and act like I'm enjoying it. And if I don't eat the cake, then someone's going to ask me why I'm not eating the cake. But then I started, well, I'm grown and that's okay. I don't have to eat the cake. And then I take it back to my desk and I leave it on my desk. But then someone would look at me funny because I didn't eat the cake. And then I stopped leaving it on my desk and I would throw it out on my way back to my desk when we were working in person, etc. Because I didn't want people to think that I was odd and that somehow I was isolating myself because I didn't want to eat the cake. So all of these kind of internal things, all of that was masked. I didn't tell anybody any of that. I'm telling you all now, years after the fact. So this is what masking looks like in limited capacities in the workplace, but also at home. So to answer the question, Jake, empathy is something that I would want to work on. Flexibility is something that I would want to work on. We all have things that we would like to work on, but these things for me are innate in terms of how I process life and information and how I move through life and information. My wife could never be on a timer. My daughter could never be on a timer. I can work without them, but I prefer to work with them. So these types of things.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, we could just stop right here and just ask questions just about that. I mean, that cake story was so real. I mean, like, because I guarantee our audience is listening to that going like, oh my God, that happens to other people. One of my autistic adult clients, he's trying to get a new job right now, and the hiring manager was like, let's go get a cup of coffee. And my client was like, I hate coffee. And I was like, we've been through this. You could get tea,
Yeah.
you could get a soda, you could just have water, you could have a scone. But he's like, but I don't like coffee. I'm like, I know. And it sucks. Like I wish the language we used what didn't take so many shortcuts, right?
Right.
Because I feel like that absolutely is the neurotypical monoculture being like pushed down on neurodivergent folks, right?
Yeah.
I love you. Says, like, I don't want this cake. I don't like this person. I don't want to be here. Like, oh man.
Had that happen way too many times.
You said you liked my birthday party, you jerk.
I wasn't invited. No, I'm kidding.
We have fun. And you said before something that I really want to highlight because I try to highlight this whenever I can. You said I want to work on empathy, and it's not like I don't have empathy, right? Because obviously you couldn't do the work you do if you didn't have empathy, right? You have to be able to put yourself in other people's positions. So would you mind exploring for us a little bit more, like for a person who has empathy and would want to work on their empathy, what do you think that next step looks like for you?
So for me, I use the example with my wife a lot. So I am not a touchy-feely person. I don't need to touch other people to make a connection with them. It happens and it's okay. And this is something that was jarring for my mother when I got diagnosed and I was expressing to her my natural state of being and these kind of things. I don't need to hug people. It's not necessarily comfortable for me. However, my wife is a huge hugger, especially when she's upset or sad. So I have had to learn, and my daughter is like me. She's not a huge hugger herself. So we're all different, but my wife is. And in scenarios where I am either confused or not necessarily in a sensitive mood, and she just wants a hug, and I'm like, well, I want a solution. I want to be better, and just hugging you right now is not going to make this any better. But in her mind, it's like, if you just hug me right now, then the world is okay. So I have learned over the years, and especially with my daughter, and I think this is somewhat of a, if you have daughters out there and you're a dad, like you want to solve the problem. Your daughter comes running to you, I have this problem, let me solve it. And I had to quickly find out that not everyone wants a solution. They just want empathy. So instead of, when something bad would happen to my daughter growing up through the formative years, instead of me trying to fix it and be like, oh, how could it get better? And what could you have done? And these kind of like philosophical conversations, I just started saying, oh, I'm sorry that happened. And somehow it was all better. I'm like, not really, because in my mind, I'm like, well, the same thing's going to happen tomorrow. And like figuratively speaking. And if I just say sorry that happened, it might make you feel better in the moment, but it's not going to resolve the underlying issue, which is where my mind is. How do we move on from this? But for them, that's that level of empathy that they need. Okay, well, sorry that happened. So I had to learn how to do that. It took many years. And with my wife, I had to learn, although I'm struggling internally with like, why is this happening? We could be over here. We could move from point A to point B. And how do we get to C? All she wants is a hug at point A. So I'm like, okay, and less words. So I have learned to just, when she's getting escalated, just to give her a hug. Now, Jake and Matt, that hug does absolutely zero for me. Now, I don't fake it because I love my wife. I'm not faking the hug. But after the hug is done and she feels better, I'm still like, okay, the problem still exists. It still exists. You just feel better about it right now. But that is how I have grown over time to show her empathy. She also will say that I'm very empathetic from the beginning. If someone else commits the harm against her or someone in my family, if someone else makes them sad or mad, then I'm Johnny on the spot. But if it's me making them sad or mad, I am more like, how is this happening? I'm less empathetic with that, and it takes longer time for me to meet them halfway. So these are things that they bring to my attention now that she is aware. She used to think I was doing these things on purpose because I did not care about her. Literally, that's the conversation. You don't care about me because I need a hug and you just won't hug me. And I'm like, no, I care about you because I want the problem to go away, not because I just wanted to feel better right now. But that was my thinking and not her thinking. In the workplace, same kind of deal. Okay, we have X client that needs Y project. Okay, well, let's talk about Y project and how we move through it versus talking about why the client is asking for Y in the first place. Like, does that really matter? That's what they want. So let's give the people what they want and tell them, hey, well, this is the outcome and this is what we need. But like, why spend all of our time talking about why they even want this project in the first place versus moving through the project so we can get paid, so we can do what we're supposed to do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the manifestation for me, like at home and in the workplace. Now, as an entrepreneur, it's a bit different. My conversations are a bit different with clients, but that's the thought throughout history of how I've had to be aware and recognize of where I am on my journey and where the other people around me are on their journey. And again, I couldn't take a pill in order to make that happen. It just had to be literally me sighing, breathing heavily, which is a trigger for my wife because she usually, when people sigh, they're exacerbated. They no longer want to listen. That wasn't it for me. I was releasing pressure because I'm like, well, I want to talk about this thing, but I know that's going to not get us where we need to be. So I need to find another release, or looking up at the ceiling, which would become a tick. And I'd look up and like rub my neck. And she again thought I was being rude and disrespectful, until we learned that I was doing that to release those pressures, to take time to think about what I'm going to respond, to not give an emotional response in the moment. But these things we had to learn over time, and coming up with trigger words and saying, hey, pineapple is a safe words, and using tokens to ensure that both parties are being heard, because it takes me longer to get out what I want to say than it does her. She just starts spewing words. Same thing with a coworker, same thing with a boss, and how your interaction is. So these are things that I have to work on within my own mind and within my own body, without, again, the help of medication, because there's nothing for me in that way, which makes these things all the more difficult, but also makes these things all the more worthwhile.
And you can see how those lessons apply to the workplace as well. If I'm working with somebody and they're sighing or looking up at the ceiling, and and I'm the boss, I'm like, look at this disrespectful person. Kids these days, nobody wants to work anymore. Various intergenerational crap. Like, but seeing behaviors for what they accomplish rather than how they look is a fundamental brain shift for a lot of people. I mean, I think if we have an ethos here at the Neurodiversity Collective and on our podcast, it's be curious, not furious.
Mm.
So if I see you rubbing your neck, I might think, oh, he's going to get ready to punch me in the face. And if I get mad in anticipation of this thing that may never happen, then I've lost that connection with you. But I'm like, hey, what you rubbing your neck for? For all I know, you got stung by a bee, right?
Yeah.
But if I put myself in a position of curiosity leads, I think, more naturally to compassion and then empathy. So, you guys are navigating through that in real time. And I just got to tell you, like, I love that you're sharing the messiness, right? Like, it's like, we had one conversation and then it was fixed, like it was a sitcom, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard, right? It's hard to have these conversations, and you're just, I mean, if you're this vulnerable with us and you barely know us, it just shows me like how remarkable of a person you are, my friend.
Well, that's high praise. I appreciate the compliment, but I look at it as this is my free therapy. That's all.
Oh no, he bought us.
But yes, you're right, and I've spent considerable amount of time, and it's a testament to you all, because you've opened up the platform to allow me to be more vulnerable, talk about my home life. But all of this applies to the workplace, like you said, like eye contact or lack thereof is a large thing, especially with Gen Z, who's attached to phones more often than not, and even if the phone is not in their hand, it seems to have this like ghost position of looking down as if their phone is in their hand. Yeah, so eye contact is a large thing, and speech patterns in terms of speed, in terms of volume. I can barely hear my daughter say anything, and because she's usually talking with AirPods in her ear, and I'm like, well, that affects how your volume is with other places and times, but also being neurodistinct, that has shown up in my life as well, because people around me tell me that I mumble, but that's because I'm thinking out loud in my head and not necessarily projecting as much as I could with my voice. And even if I'm using words, a lot of times I'm using hand motions or grunts, for lack of a better term. I respond by grunting a lot, or like instead of saying yes, or these kind of things. And I find myself doing that. But all of these things play a factor in the workplace, more so or less so for me these days as an entrepreneur. But these are things that people that are go in and out of the office, or whether or not you work from home, communication is extremely important, and understanding, and like you said, being more curious versus furious, and coming to those assumptions very quickly. If people ask more questions, which I like to do, I enjoy asking questions. If people ask more questions, then they would get probably better answers from the source themselves, rather than their own experiences or their own thought patterns. So thank you for making that connection. And again, Thank you for the compliment. It's not unnecessary, but you guys do a great job of opening up the platform.
I want to also just thank you again as well too. But I have so many like questions and topics to bring up for you that I just want to like dive into because you're such a fascinating person. You're so well spoken on all of these different topics and so knowledgeable on them too. One of the things that I kind of want to touch on a little bit is your experience as well, like leading you to the diversity position that you're in, where talking about workplace, talking about friends, talking about family, and understanding like more of the empathy, the curiosity first rather than the reactions. And like, what was your path to getting to that point where you took on this diversity role, not just specifically for like any one direction, but like broad diversity in a sense?
Yeah. Well, I've been a serial entrepreneur. This is probably the third or fourth business that I've tried my hand out, but the most successful and the most sustainable. And easy way to say that I did not study any of this work at all. In my roles, I informally took on this type of work. I raised my hand to do this type of work without knowing what it was by name. Again, like I mentioned, I worked in environments that were highly diverse, that were highly inequitable, but then I had responsibility for rectifying a measure of that inequity. So both formal and informal started out more informal roles, being the person, my autistic nature, specifically in one of my high school roles as an admissions officer at an elite STEM academy. I became the de facto editor in the office because of my autistic nature. I have the uncanny ability, to the chagrin of many of folk, to find errors in writing rather quickly. Oh, you missed a period, or there's only one space after that period, there should be two, or you missed the Oxford comma, or these kind of things, because I am a reader, writer, thinker. So I look at these things and I don't do it to be annoying. I want the product to be the best it can be. So people, fortunately, in that role saw it as a good thing. And they were like, hey, like, that's cool. Continue doing it. And I enjoy doing it. And it was in a small environment of an office of three. Now, while I had a positive experience, that can also turn to a negative experience, and their skills can be overused and they can be marginalized because, oh, you showed special ability here, so we're going to keep you here. And we're not going to go there, and I'll answer the question. But that's part of those informal ways that I became in positions to inform. And all those communications, they went out to all of the students and the families that we were trying to recruit. So it informally became a formal role by my autistic nature, those kind of things. Moving forward in my career, I started looking at specific diversity and inclusion roles that I could have formal responsibility. Since I didn't have the education background, I went the certification background. So I gained certifications because, in my mind, if you don't have the education background, you have to get the hands-on experience. And if you don't have the hands-on formal experience, then you need to get certified and show someone that you are capable of doing X. And once you're capable of doing X, they see you as an expert in that realm. And then they give you either more respect, more responsibility, etc. So I took a deep dive. I enjoy thinking about my thinking. Like I said, I read white papers on the weekend for fun. I enjoy that work. So that's what I did. I read all the books that I could get my hands on that were DEI related. I talked to as many people as I could, and I researched what I thought to be the best certifications that I could attain to say, yes, I know what I'm talking about in this realm. And that's what led me to the Certified Diversity Executive, which there are two certifications of that nature. The first is the Certified Diversity Professional, but the executive takes a more global approach, so a higher order thinking type of thing. And since then, and through my business, I have been positioning myself as an expert by talking to other experts like you all and having conversations, and by writing and positioning my business also with business certifications that people can see that, yes, this person in this business is about business and doing it the right way. So it came informally, but once that I understood that I had background skill, once I had my diagnosis, once I understood that all of the jobs that I had and all of the former careers that I had gave me multiple different experiences, I took a deep dive. And like I said, read everything that I could, spoke to everyone that I could, had informational interviews with anybody that would speak to me and answer questions that I had. And then I went and spent a little bit of money to get certified. And then from there, was looking directly at hardcore DEI related jobs and or contracts to work on and with and for.
So a lot of questioning extending from that led you to it a little bit.
So yes, lots of questions. I enjoy asking questions. And in my opinion, the only way to learn anything from another person is to ask them something. Not the only way, but for me, one of the most enjoyable ways is to ask. So yeah, asking questions is a very important process. And me being a consultant, asking questions is part of what I do daily of clients, etc. And then I have to provide solutions. But yeah, asking questions. But in terms of the questions that you all have asked, they've been great questions, and I am happy. I don't know how you all operate, but there's so much to talk about, and you all have been gracious hosts, and I'm happy to rejoin and talk about something else at some other point in time.
I mean, I think there's no way we couldn't have you back. I mean, because like I actually feel like being a part of recording this podcast, I feel like how I feel when I'm listening to a good episode of one of my favorite podcasts. Like it come to the end of like Radio Lab.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want it to end. I want to know more. So we're definitely gonna have you back and we can explore more about what this looks like from that mailroom to the boardroom and just in all the awesome stuff we can continue to learn from you. Oh my gosh. So what we're going to pivot to now, Grant, is we're going to move to our wrap-up questions, and then we'll ask you to say something to send, a piece of knowledge to send our audience home with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start us off. If you could have any superhero on speed dial, who would it be and why?
If I could have a superhero on speed dial. Ironically, I don't necessarily think it's a superhero. Are you guys familiar with Pinky and the Brain?
What? Oh my, yes, of course.
So yeah. I like the brain. I don't want to like take over the world, but his approach to like, hey, this is what we're going to do. I always liked the brain and like his approach. I have no desire to take over the world, but I do have a desire to like be the best and have this like deep burning passion to take a deep dive on anything that comes my way. And I feel like that the brain embodied that. And again, this is not something that I go around day to day talking about. I want to be the brain. This is actually the first time I've thought about it. But yeah, like I think that would be my choice, minus the take over the world part. But yeah, so, yeah.
We have gotten a lot of answers. We've definitely not gotten that answer yet. But, I mean, that was my favorite show as a kid. And because I would say like those are the two parts of me, right? My giftedness and my ADHD, and often at war with each other. Narf. Oh my gosh. Okay. Jake, good luck topping that one, Chief.
Whew, I don't know if I can, honestly.
You can't. I don't.
Like, Grant, you literally just threw me back to when I was in like elementary school watching TV, and I was like, "Oh my God, Pinky and the Brain's coming on! I can't wait to watch."
Yeah. Pinky and Brain was awesome. Yeah.
That was one of my favorites. Like the whole collection of like different little shorts that they did around those. Oh, thank you for that. But my question for you is, what's your favorite word and why?
Oh, I have lots of favorite words. When I was a kid, very short story. When I was a kid, we weren't allowed to be bored. So if we told mom I'm bored, she would tell us to go read the dictionary. So we weren't allowed to be bored. So many. Give me a moment, because there are several words that I enjoy, but give me a moment.
No worries. I'm also glad that there's a bunch of them that you're trying to pick through.
I can hear my own mother in my head. It's like, only boring people get bored. I'm like, that's a logical fallacy. What? Okay. I'll
Yeah.
I'll do things.
Yeah, so A word that I enjoy saying is discombobulated. So discombobulated is a word that's a fun word to say for those of you who are discombobulated by the word discombobulated. It just means you're confused. So, but it's a interesting way to say confused. It's a different way to say confused, and that's the beauty of the English language. There are many different words to explain the same thing. So I like to say discombobulated. It's a fun word to say. So that's what I would give you today.
Oh my gosh. And Grant, do you travel a lot for work?
Not as much as I used to, but I try to keep it that way because I have a growing family. I like to stay with them more often than not, but I have throughout the years. Yeah,
Have you ever flown into Milwaukee?
not Milwaukee, but I have been to the great state.
So Milwaukee Public Schools got a Javits grant last year, so I went up there a couple of times to work with them to better support their gifted kids. And when you pass through security in the Milwaukee airport, on the other side of the scanners, there's a sign that says recombobulation era. So you have been discombobulated by going through security. Now you can
Yeah,
recombobulate.
you can combobulate. That's cool.
And I'm like, that's the most Midwest thing ever. It's like, okay, okay, guys, let's get recombobulated. I just,
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Discombobulated is a fun word. So add that to your personal dictionaries out there for those of you who are listening.
love it. Oh, wow. This is such a great conversation. Grant, I'm like sitting here on the edge of my seat. Like, what's something that you can send our audience home with? Like, what's something you want them to know?
Yeah, so what I like to talk about with all this is I describe myself as being neurodistinct, and we are all distinct as human beings, whether we are neurotypical or not. And I encourage everyone to live a life full of distinction. And whatever that looks like for you, and however you achieve that, do not look at being neurodistinct as odd or weird or different. And even if you do look at those things, none of those things happen to be negative. But I encourage and promote living a life full of distinction at home and at work. So just remember that whether you are neurotypical or otherwise, you are a distinct human being and you have a distinct and innate responsibility to live your life to the fullest. So that's what I would leave you with.
I love that.
Yeah.
Another thing, if you could just leave them with as well, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, that's pretty much easy because I am only on one social media platform. I can't handle more than one. I am on LinkedIn. I will give you guys, I use Linktree, which is basically a website that lists all my other websites and places where people can get me. My books are on Amazon. My website is on my LinkedIn. If you search for me, that would be GT Harris 555. Or if you look at Grant Harris on LinkedIn, I'm there. Compliance2community.com is my website, but you'll find all of my activity on LinkedIn. So I'm happy to share those details with you all as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And that'll all be in the show notes for everybody listening as well.
So we learned a lot. We processed things. We talked about what it looks like in the real world. We talked about what it looks like at work. We got to have a flashback to like God tier level mid 90s cartoons. Like the theme song is playing in my brain right now, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to anchor everything in being neurodistinct and to not only bring that word out there, but to make it so real and tangible. I mean, truly, it was a pleasure to have you. And, I learned a lot. And that's why we started this, right? To get to talk to other people, to learn their stories. And, I mean, and hopefully everybody leaves a little bit wiser, a little bit more informed, a little bit more empathetic. And, certainly we've done our job today. So thank you, Grant. You're really just a tremendous person, and we're happy. We're honored to have you as our guest today.
Thank you. I feel the same. Very much looking forward to coming back.
So for everybody here at Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, thanks for enjoying this podcast episode with us. Thank you for being here and supporting our work in this community. We hope that you've also learned and been inspired today. I have a feeling you have been. So for everybody here, I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski. With me, as always, is my Ed McMahon, Mr. Jake Noonan.
Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. And thanks again, Grant, for being on here.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.